No Credits Roll.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of No Credits Rolled. That's right, the big 2-0, everyone. My name is Sam Whalen. I'll be your host today. On today's episode, we're going to cover some news stories. I'm sure you all missed me droning on about news stories. So we're bringing it back, baby. Time to put the J back in journalism by quoting real journalists. After that, we're going to talk about Final Fantasy XVI. I kind of picked this game up on a whim, and I have absolutely fallen in love with it, so we're going to talk about that in the second half of the show. Happy to have you with me today. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. We will be there for you. We're also on TikTok. Of course, at the time of recording this, apparently there's going to be a TikTok ban, so hey, go subscribe while you can. Of course, there was also a TikTok ban like 7 months ago, so I don't know. Go subscribe anyway, though. All right. Also on YouTube at No Credits Rolled, you can check us out there as well. But let's get right into the show. All right, so first story up, we have Nintendo Switch 2 reveal release date reportedly leaked alongside release window. So yeah, it is, we're back, baby. The Switch 2 rumors are back, and this time I think it's real. This is from Wesley Yin Poole over at IGN. He said, quote, leaker Nate the Hate, which that's a great little handle there. Nate the Hate was first to report that Nintendo allegedly plans to reveal the Switch 2 this week on January the 16th. For those listening, we are recording this on the 14th, so maybe by the time you're listening to this, we will have the reveal of the Switch 2. Wesley goes on to say, this will allegedly come in the form of a hardware-focused trailer rather than a launch lineup reveal. That will reportedly come, that being the launch lineup reveal, will reportedly come via a software-focused direct later in February or early March. This was then backed up by sources over at The Verge and VGC as well. So this looks pretty legit. I hope it's legit because I feel like we have just been waiting for this forever now. And it makes sense that they would want to kick off 2025 this way. Fiscally, I know it's like the fiscal calendar or whatever goes into March, so they're probably waiting to get out of that. But yeah, what a way to kick off 2025. For me, like I just said, Nintendo has kind of been in sort of a limbo throughout 2024. There were still games that came out that I liked, like we talked about Super Mario RPG. But you know, we've all kind of been waiting for that Switch 2. I mean, you had releases like Pokemon Violet? Scarlet? Sorry if that's wrong. A lot of these recent Switch releases where you really can feel the age of this hardware. You know, we're talking about a 7-year-old piece of tech here. And some games handle that better than others, right? Like, I really felt like Super Mario RPG, the remake, was fine for the most part. But again, that goes into the kind of game you're making and the art style of the game. And, you know, Super Mario RPG and Paper Mario, both those games, it's like, it's not super graphically intense, but like something like an open world Pokemon game, you're going to notice that they're a lot more. So yeah, we're all waiting for the Switch 2 for sure. There have been all kinds of leaks recently surrounding the Switch 2. This is more from Wesley and Poole. He said, quote, they include larger SL and SR buttons than on the Nintendo Switch Joy-Con. And those are basically like I think those are like the bumpers in terms of a Switch, which you'd expect given the Nintendo Switch 2 is reportedly a bigger console than the original. These new Joy-Cons allegedly ditched the railed lock method used by the current Switch in favor of electromagnet suction controllers. Magnets, how do they work, right? But I like the sound of that. I would prefer magnets over the sort of sliding rail plastic thing they got going on now. I think magnets would make it a lot easier, especially if you're in like a party environment, passing controllers around. There was always that little bit of like, you know, it would be a little bit more convenient if you could just detach and attach them without having to worry about sort of locking them in like you do with the current Switch. From what I can tell, like I looked at a lot of these rumors, and it's like everything under the sun, right? When the rumor mill starts going, you're going to hear all kinds of stuff. I saw one that was like, it's going to have 2 USB ports, one on the top and one on the bottom. So, you know, we're going to get what we get, right? And like, it seems like a Nintendo thing, right? For people to speculate this much. And it's also like anytime you're going to get new hardware, people want to speculate, well, what's it going to come with? What's it going to not have? What's it going to cost? And that's exactly what we're going to do today. But here's what we know, right? So pretty much all we know, and I'm pulling more from Wesley's IGN article here, sort of rephrasing it from what else I read. The Switch games are going to be backwards compatible with whatever the new console ends up being. This was confirmed by Nintendo president Shintaro Furukawa on Twitter, on a Twitter post there. He came right out and said that is the case. Other than that, Nintendo's going to Nintendo, right? If I had to guess, I don't really see them deviating from the Switch too much. I expect it to just be a upgrade. But in terms of concept, in terms of it being able to be docked and handheld and very transportable, I don't see them deviating from that, because I think they really hit the perfect balance between like the Wii and the DS in terms of there's that portability aspect, but then there's also that home console aspect of it. And, you know, the Switch is pretty revolutionary for that, I think. And so I think they're just going to upgrade that for the Switch too. Better performance is really what I'm hoping for the most. That's like my biggest thing. I'm really hope, and this is like, I'm going to sound like a snob here, but it's just like, I would love 4K graphics capability, 60 frames per second consistently. I don't know if we're going to get that. I mean, we'll have to wait and see, but that's my biggest thing I'm looking for when this thing is announced. I would like the hardware to be more beefed up, and I would like it to be able to run all the games that are coming out for it, effectively. So for me personally, I never really use my Switch in handheld mode. So in terms of what it can do as its like own standalone piece of handheld tech, I really don't care about that. I want it to be, technologically competent in docked mode. And like I said, 4K 60 FPS would be ideal. I don't know if we're going to get that. I think that would be awesome. Now that's probably going to drive the price point up too, which we'll talk about in a second. Personally, I'm okay with that though. Like if it means that we're getting modern technology out of this thing, right? They mentioned in that post or in that article that there is not going to be a launch lineup trailer initially. It sounds like they're going to save that for a direct, which makes sense. But I'm really excited to see what we're going to get announced for the Switch 2. I think they already confirmed another Mario Kart, like a Mario Kart 9, not a Mario Kart 8 super duper edition, but a full new numbered Mario Kart, which is pretty cool. I like Mario Kart. It's not something I probably am not going to play it by myself, but it is like a perfect party game. And there's plenty of those on the Switch, but like a full new 3D Mario game in the vein of like a Mario Odyssey, I am kind of expecting that, honestly, because that did launch with the original Switch 7 years ago. That game was awesome, and I would love to get another entry in that vein. Can you imagine if they do a Galaxy 3, like a Super Mario Galaxy 3? They're probably not going to do that, but that'd be cool, right? What else we got? It's probably too early for a new Zelda, but I could totally see them doing a remaster. And that's the other note I have here when it comes to launch lineup. The ports. Think of the ports, right? Nintendo loves their ports. We basically got the whole Wii U now playable, the whole Wii U catalog rather, now playable on Nintendo Switch. And I would not be shocked if they do it again with all their Switch games like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. It would not surprise me. Well, I guess those are backwards compatible, so I guess you don't have to remake them, right? But like maybe they will to make them run better if they're not optimized for the Switch 2. I don't know. Those were just examples, but you know what I mean, right? We're probably going to get ports of something because Nintendo loves doing that. So the final note here I've got about the Switch 2 is like, how much is this thing going to cost, right? I mentioned that I want the 4K 60 FPS, and that's definitely going to jack up the price. I don't think I'd be willing to pay more than like $400 for it. Because like, what does a PS5 go for now? Like somewhere in the $500 to $600 range. And you got to remember that if it's going to be a Switch 2, you're going to be able to carry this thing around with you. So realistically, I'm gonna guess it's going to be like in the $350 to $400 range. I don't know. I'm kind of just spitballing here. I don't exactly have experience pricing these things out, but that's just my guess. And again, this is going to depend on the technology that the thing's got inside of it. And we're going to have to wait and see what happens when it is announced. Maybe sometime this week. One final note here. It's also worth noting that we've been using the same Switch for 7 years, not counting the Switch OLED, because it's the same. I don't that could be wrong. I was going to say it's the same hardware, but I know they've like improved the batteries in them and things like that. So there've been like incremental changes, but like generally we've been using the same Switch for 7 years. So I don't know, would you be okay paying a little bit more if you're going to be using this thing for almost a decade? Personally, yeah, I don't mind, right? Like if I'm even if we get into the $500 range, but I'm going to be able to use this thing for 7 more years and it's going to have the 4K 60 FPS. Look, we're getting to the point in gaming where the human eye can only like perceive such high quality, right? We're going to hit certain frame rates and we're going to hit certain resolutions that it's just as good as it's going to get in terms of how, the fidelity that we can achieve. So if the Switch 2 can get close to that and, we don't, and we're using this thing for the foreseeable future, I wouldn't mind coughing up a little bit more money if it means that it's, extremely quality hardware. But we're going to have to wait and see what Nintendo has to reveal. Anyway, story number 2 here, we have Assassin's Creed Shadows delayed to March, and some new DLC leaks to come along with that. So this is a statement, I believe this is from Ubisoft. I don't remember the name of the studio that's handling this game. It's one of the French studios. I apologize, Montpellier maybe. I might have just made that up. That might not even be a studio. See, I write like 6 pages of notes for this show and then I forget something like that. And I'm on a roll right now, so I'm not going to stop and look it up. Anyway, here's a statement from their Twitter. Quote, since November, we've been thrilled to share our progress through gameplay overviews, and the overwhelming excitement has truly inspired us. Each week has brought valuable feedback from our community. While we've already made remarkable strides, we believe a few additional weeks are needed to implement that feedback and ensure an even more ambitious and engaging day one experience. So, personally, I really don't have an issue with this. I mean, it was already a pretty sizable delay from November, I think it was November, to February. And it totally makes sense to going by what they said in this statement here of like they took player feedback and they're making some changes. It is what it is, right? It's another month. I'm not chomping at the bit for this game. I'm not even sure I'm going to pick it up. I've said that, right? But like, I'm going to attempt to not buy it on day one. I said it, I think I said it in the last episode. I have like no self-control when it comes to these things, so I'm probably going to buy it, but let's be honest. But like, I don't know. Hey, if it takes another month in the oven, that's perfectly fine. In terms of like Ubisoft's point of view for this game, I think this game really needs to be a success, and I think that's another factor going into why they have delayed it twice now, and why it seems like they're really trying to make sure they nail this, right? There's a lot of production behind this. The marketing has been going on for a while, and now with this player feedback, they really seem to be taking it to heart, right? Because if you think about Ubisoft in the last year or two, they've had some, and I'm talking about Ubisoft as a whole brand, not individual Ubisoft studios, so I'm kind of rolling them into one here. But you had Star Wars Outlaws and Skull and Bones, and those were not critically or commercially successful. You had Assassin's Creed Mirage, which was, I think it's like a 70 on Metacritic. I looked when I was writing these notes, which is fine, right? But it wasn't really the return to form that a lot of AC fans were hoping it was, and that it was pitched as. It was still very much in the vein of your Assassin's Creed Valhalla's in terms of like gameplay, the stealth mechanics and stuff. I haven't finished Mirage. I've played a little bit of it. It just really didn't grab me too much. But I know it's supposed to be a shorter experience. It's not really meant to be a full mainline Assassin's Creed title. It's sort of like a Miles Morales to a Spider-Man kind of thing. But because of all this, Ubisoft needs a big tentpole franchise to land. I mean, you even look at the Far Cry series, right? Far Cry 6, Far Cry 5, and this is just my personal opinion, I didn't look up sales figures and stuff, but I really enjoyed Far Cry 5. I did not like Far Cry 6. I thought it was not good. Like, I thought it tried to do like a live service thing, and it had like weird ammo mechanics that it just didn't feel very Far Cry. I just think the time for Far Cry might be past us, honestly. I don't know how Far Cry, unless they do a drastic shift, change up in gameplay. I just think those games, I don't know. I just think those games are tough to sell these days. But again, maybe that's just the direction they took Far Cry 6. But again, another Ubisoft tentpole franchise that has sort of missed the mark lately. And AC Valhalla was, in my opinion, like just the worst. I really don't like that game. So they need a home run here to sort of get back on track and to sort of reinvigorate people's faith in Ubisoft. Because I mean, like, there is not a whole lot of faith in Ubisoft. I was going to include it in this story, but I didn't. I saw a headline and it was like they've hired advisors to like overview their brand strategies and stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's probably because they've had a bunch of like flops. Maybe flop is too harsh, but not the success that they've probably been looking for. I swear I heard rumors that they were considering selling to somebody, but that might have been a different company. But either way, going back to AC Shadows here, this game really needs to land. And it's similar to the conversation we had about Starfield way back when that game came out, and how Bethesda needed that game to land. And, you know, Starfield was what it was, and I've come around on it. It didn't have a great launch, but I think Ubisoft is in a similar situation here with the Assassin's Creed franchise. And especially with the setting being in Japan, this has been something that people have wanted since the franchise began. Of course, we ended up getting Ghost of Tsushima, which I still think is like the perfect Japanese Assassin's Creed game. They already made it, but we'll see what AC Shadows ends up being. So it's another mark on this game of like, this has to be something special. This has to blow people away, quite frankly. I don't know if it's going to do that. I don't know. Maybe I'm setting the expectations too high, but, you know, I've seen a handful of gameplay trailers and it looks good. It looks like fun. The setting looks like it's very inspired, very, look, they put a lot of care into it is what I mean. But we'll have to see what happens. What else I got here? So yeah, more time in the oven is usually a good thing, especially if it's after player test, right? If you're taking player feedback, that, you know, they might have caught some things that internal testing didn't. So that's always a good thing to take that advice. This is from Tom Henderson over at Inside Gaming. This is actually about some leaked DLC that was leaked on the Steam page for AC Shadows. And this is before the game has even come out, by the way. So he said, quote, "The new information comes courtesy of the Assassin's Creed Shadows Steam page, which was updated after the game's recent delay. As a part of the update, the new description reads, pre-purchase now to get a bonus mission." Don't mind me, I have to turn the page. I don't know if you can hear that, but I use a old-fashioned paper for these notes. Upcoming Claws of Awaji expansion. That's the name of the expansion, by the way. Travel to a new region, get over 10 hours of additional content, play over 3 levels, and unlock a new weapon type, new skills, gear, and abilities. In addition to the Claws of Awaji, Insider Gaming also exclusively reported in October 2024 that Ubisoft is planning to release a co-op mode for Shadows and is currently under the codename League. I didn't know that until I read this story. I did not know that there was a leaked multiplayer mode for this game, so I expounded a little bit on that. Apparently media previews have gone out. I think that's what they said in this article, but the embargoes aren't up yet, and obviously they probably have been adjusted now that the game's been delayed. As far as that DLC goes, the DLC, it sounds like what you would expect, right? It sounds like you want people to pre-order the $120 version of this game that's going to come with all the bells and whistles that suckers like me buy. And I think that's pretty much what that sounds like. I mean, they can make the poster, they can make the content roadmap where it's like, you know, day 1 launch, AC Shadows, the content pack 1, Claws of Awaji, content pack 2, and we go to Detroit, Michigan. I don't know, but you know what I mean, right? Like when you buy these games and they like show you, here's what you're getting in 6 months, here's what you're getting in a year to like incentivize you. But hey, you know, 10 hours of gameplay, the new region, all that sounds great. So the multiplayer part though, that was the part that interested me because I didn't know about that. I didn't really play Assassin's Creed Unity multiplayer. I wish I did, but I didn't have any friends to game with at the time. Very sad, I know. I did play the multiplayer in, what was it, Brotherhood? One of those Ezio games where you're like one person's needs to be assassinated and you're like hiding and stuff. That was fun. But something in the vein of AC Unity where you're assassins completing missions together, I think that would be awesome. And if that's the direction they're taking this, I think that could be a lot of fun. If it's like self-contained missions where it's co-op. I mean, even Ghost of Tsushima like did the wave defense mode, and that's awesome. So if they do something like that, you know, I'm just really curious to see what this multiplayer mode is going to end up looking like. I just made like a joke note here at the end. I was like, just give me GTA Online, but in like old time Japan. I was going to say feudal Japan, and then I was going to say Edo Japan. I don't know anything about Japanese history, so I didn't want to like misname the era. So I just put old timey Japan. But give me like a GTA Online where I'm an assassin. I think that'd be fun. But yeah, so we got some delay for this game. We're now looking for a March release date, some leaked DLC, but you know, hey, like I said, more time in the oven is usually a good thing, and they really need this game to land, and I hope it does. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to give, by we, I mean me. Me am going to give my thoughts on Final Fantasy XVI. You're listening to No Credits Rolled. And we're back on No Credits Rolled. By the way, I don't know if you guys know this, but now with my new setup, I have like a soundboard next to me so I can hit all these elements live. So we're going to press a button. I don't know what it does. It might be really loud, but let's see what this button does. This is the yellow button on the soundboard. Hey, that's a crowd. Wow. Also, it stops on a dime when I hit it, so I don't know. Maybe we'll work those in more. Isn't that right, folks? Anyway, moving on. My thoughts on Final Fantasy XVI. I had no intentions of reviewing this game anytime soon, but it was on sale, and they put Clive, the main character, in Tekken 8, and that was how I fell down this rabbit hole for this video game. I had bought the what is it called? Season Pass or Fighter Pass or whatever for Tekken 8 when it came out, because I bought the Super Duper edition of that game for no reason. So I got Clive for free. So I was like, oh, you know, and I've been wanting to play like a fighting game. So I was like, let me re-download Tekken 8. Let me jump in. Let me see if I still suck at this. And I do. So good to know. But I played a couple matches as Clive, and I was like, wow, this guy's awesome. He looks really cool. This is an audio podcast, but you can look up what he looks like. He's got like a cape and a cool, he looks like a vampire almost. Big fan. So I was like, you know what? Let me just bite the bullet and pick up Final Fantasy XVI. And I'll tell you what, folks, this game is already a 10 out of 10 for me. I haven't finished it yet because it's the name of the show. I also would like to put a caveat here that with all my reviews on this show, it's always in progress. I very rarely do I actually review a game that I've completed. So with all that being said, this game is still a 10 out of 10 for me. It has some of the highest highs of any game I've ever played. I mean, like the hype that this game can bring out of you is like nothing else. I talked about my Astrobot review. If you like joy, go play Astrobot. If you like hype, if you like anime and big anime fights and like people overcoming their personal demons to then get a power up, you know, go play Final Fantasy XVI. And also, I actually care about the stories and characters in this game, which is nice. Because like playing through Rebirth and stuff, it's not that I don't care about the characters in Rebirth. I just don't know what's going on. Like the basic plot, I find it to be very confusing. The characters are, I think, the standout of that game of like, even though you might not know, if you're me, you might not know what's going on, but you still care about Aerith and Tifa and Cloud and Barrett and Red 13. And I think I got them all. Oh, Yuffie's there too. But like, because I am disconnected from the plot, there is a disconnect in terms of my overall connection with the game and the world. Not to mention I didn't play Final Fantasy VII when it initially came out. I don't have nostalgia for it. So I think one of the things that Final Fantasy XVI has going for it is that it's its own contained world. Like you have the icons, which it's spelled EIKONS, by the way, because it's just a cooler way to spell it. The icons are like the big monsters in this universe, and every city or like every society has its own icon that they kind of build their civilization around. Those are like the ultimates. Final Fantasy fans probably hate me. Those are like from other games, right? Like there's Ifrit and Bahamut, I think is his name, and Shiva. Like those have all shown up in other games, the Titans and stuff. So like that's not recycled, but that's like old old things that people that know Final Fantasy will know. And there's other things, like there's Moogles, the little puff guys that like float around. But in terms of like the world and the lore and stuff, it is its own thing, which I think for me helped me get on board a lot more, because I was in there from the beginning, learning all these characters and learning the lore of this world. And I found it to be very interesting. It helps that this game is a lot like Naruto, the anime. There are characters with beasts inside them that they can harness the power of, and you know, sometimes they lose control of that power, and all these societies being built around these big monsters, and it's a lot like Naruto. So that helps. However, I would describe this game as having like the highest of peaks and then sort of flat, boring valleys in between. I guess instead of it being a valley, it'd be more like a plain, right? And that does sound like a bad thing. However, the highs are so high that I think they make up for it. And I'll talk about that more in a second. Generally, the game progression is like incredible boss fight, followed by a very steep quality drop off in gameplay and overall quality. You know, while the content of the in-between parts can be like really boring, like on the level of an MMO, fetch quest, go here, kill 6 things, come back. I honestly, like, for me, the story sections and the big boss fights are just so impressive and honestly just incredible, that for me, the in-between sort of boring parts can almost be like a nice breather. And they don't drag the whole experience down too much for me. But I do want to talk more on my positives here before I talk more about that. I label it as filler content, which sounds kind of mean, but it is kind of filler content. But anyway, positives first. I would like to highlight Ben Starr as Clive Rossfield. He is incredible. Like, I'm sure I missed the discourse about this when it came out about how great he was, but hearing his performance, it's probably like top 5 for me in video game performances. Like the way he's able to convey Clive's like intense, like almost guttural in some scenes emotion. It's like so raw and effective, and it really helps sell this story and the world the game builds. Because like the game is trying to go for a Game of Thrones sort of gritty, you know, people say curse words and have sex and stuff, and there's blood and people get their heads cut off. So when you have a character like Clive who is in this world, and you have a performance from Ben Starr that is emotional, right? When he delivers a lot of his lines, especially in the big story beats, he is incredible. Like I don't know how to describe it. Like he's worth playing the game for alone. There's also Ralph Ineson as Sid, who is incredible. He's is maybe the coolest character in video game history. The second he appears on screen, I was like, this guy, I want to make this guy like my whole personality. His voice is cool. You probably know Ralph Ineson. He's like an actor. He was in, he's going to be Galactus in the new Fantastic Four movies. If you hear his voice, you'd probably recognize him. But he's been in a bunch of stuff. His voice, like I said, voice is cool. He has lightning powers, which, you know, if you had to pick an element, lightning is always a cool power to have. He's like a pirate king, revolutionary guy. He dresses, everybody in this game dresses cool, but Clive especially. He's got like these cool gloves, and he dresses in the color blue, which is always a plus. He is awesome, right? Like every time he's on screen, I don't ever want him to leave. And he's just the coolest. And there's multiple times in the game so far where he has like saved you and had like a big heroic entrance, and it never gets old. I am absolutely obsessed with him. And I would like, I'll get his tattoo on my forehead, maybe. I don't know. There's also Torgal. He's the dog. He's like your dog companion. He's like a big wolf. Clive is basically Jon Snow from Game of Thrones. So you have your ghost instead of Ghost. His name's Torgal. He's great. He's like your buddy. But yeah, who doesn't love having a dog companion? And I really hope he doesn't die or something horrific happen to him, because that would be very sad. In a perfect world, and I said this from the beginning, I would like Torgal to have icon powers so he can transform into a big dog monster thing, kind of like He-Man and Battle Beast, you know? I'm sure you understand that reference. Google it, or ask your parents. I don't know. Going back to the Game of Thrones comparison, so that like edginess or like intensity in terms of the blood and the gore and the sex and stuff, it can be a little jarring because they do kind of like throw it in your face at first, be like, this ain't your daddy's Final Fantasy, right? But like once you get through the game starts with like it starts like in media res, but then you get like this big giant flashback that explains a lot of things. Once you get through that flashback, I think by that point, I at least was like completely bought in on the world. And once you get caught back up to the present day, like everything makes a lot more sense. And you're like, okay, I understand this world. I care about these characters and I'm good to go. And, you know, once you're there, the tone is, I think, it fits everything else in the game. I broke this down into a couple categories because when I've got so many things to say about a game, it's tough to organize my thoughts. But I just want to talk about the music for a second. I have talked smack about Final Fantasy music in the past. I've said it's just all choirs, and it is still. But like in this game, and I think it goes back to me caring, right? Which probably helps. I'm less of a hater. There are a lot of factors that go into making these boss fights in this game as peak as they are. And the music is undeniably one of those keys, right? There's like, I mean, it really just elevates it, right? And it's what everybody talks about when they talk about Final Fantasy music, of it just being absolutely incredible, emotional, moving. Yeah, I mean, what else is there to say, right? Even the quieter, slower music in areas like the Hideaway are very catchy, and there's like very good. I'm blanking on the term for it, but it's like when you're just kind of in a place, like in a environment, and there's just music playing all the time, like the theme of that environment. I think they nail all those as well. There's great battle music. I mean, it's Final Fantasy music, and it's they knock it out of the park here. I mean, it's if you like that kind of music, you're gonna like it here. And like I said, it really does help with the epicness of all these boss fights. Speaking of fights, the combat. So this is like a major portion of the game, right? You're mostly doing this combat. And I'm kind of two minds when it comes to this combat. When you start the game, I think it can feel a little repetitive. And enemies feel a little too beefy. And by the way, I'm playing on normal difficulty. I think. I think I picked the combat preference, so whatever. So when you start, you don't really have a whole lot of magic powers. So it's very much just like, okay, well, I can hit square, 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 triangle. And that's kind of it. And there was one fight in particular. I think you fight like a troll or something. And I mean, you're just wailing on this thing for like 15 minutes, it feels like, because you don't have like superpowers yet. So in the beginning, it can be a little tough, right? And especially when you're doing these flashbacks and you don't have your full ability moveset yet. It's a little repetitive and it can be a little stale. But I think if you can push through that, and pretty relatively early on, you can get more abilities, and you get different classes almost. I'll talk about that in a second. But I think having these extra abilities allows you to have more variety in combat, and therefore combat becomes more fun. My biggest comparison with this game is I think it reminds me a lot of God of War 3, which I absolutely love that game. It's like there's an element of nostalgia there because I was like 12 when that game came out, but also I still love that game. Like I've played the remaster of it and it still holds up in my opinion. But the combat in God of War 3 is a lot like combat in this game, where you've got different, in God of War 3, you've got different weapons that give you different movesets. So you've got like the big Hercules fists, you've got the Hades scythes. I don't remember what the other ones are. The Blades of Chaos, and there's the fourth one. But in this game, you've got the different icons that you can harness their power. So you start with the Phoenix, and then you get Garuda, who's the wind one, like a big bird thing. And I'm sure you get more. Again, I haven't finished the game, but so when you get each of these new powers, that allows you to have a whole new moveset, and each one has its own skill tree, and you can swap between them at will, which is pretty cool. Because then at that point, I mean, there's all kinds of combos you can do if you are proficient enough in the button pressing, right? So you can like hold your right trigger and then triangle and do like a fire spin move as the Phoenix, and then switch real quick with tapping left trigger to Garuda, and then hit the same button, but now you have like claws and you're slashing. So you can build these like awesome combos. And I think the feedback the game gives you is, I don't even know what the word is, helpful, I guess, or it's like, I talk about in Call of Duty, when you get a kill in Call of Duty and like all kinds of stuff pops up on your screen and how that makes the dopamine flow. This game is like that too, where you're getting like, Devil May Cry is the biggest comparison a lot of people made, where you're getting like triple combo and then it's like icon counter and it's like all this stuff popping up on your screen. It can be a little busy, but I really enjoy it. And I think it incentivizes you to make more elaborate combos and to really like put time into the combat, and it's like the combat is not difficult, right? Like I've only come close to dying a handful of times, but it's really, for me, I get enjoyment out of seeing how I can chain these abilities together and seeing when I can call Torgal in, because he's there sometimes too. And you can like, he's got different abilities that you can then work in. It can be a little overwhelming at first, and the game is actually great about, there's like equipment you can attach that makes it just like simplifies portions of the game. So like for a while, I was trying to get the Torgal timing down where like you would tap up on the D-pad to have him jump in and extend a combo. But like it was a bit much. So I equipped the thing that makes it, he'll just attack whenever it's the perfect time. And that allowed me to then extend my regular combos with just what Clive was doing. And I think that's really cool. There's also like, you can automatically have potions will automatically pop, stuff like that. Lots of, I don't know if they're accessibility, but a lot of things to make the game more playable if you do just want to experience the story. And I do think the story is worth experiencing. What else we got? I was talking about God of War, blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah. So, I found myself just like going out of my way to fight just random mobs just for fun, because I wanted to get better at doing these combos, and I wanted to use these abilities because they all feel cool and they all look cool. I'm not really a combo chaser. Like when I played Devil May Cry 5, I didn't care about the combos. I just kind of wanted to get through that game. I didn't love it. But it was on Games Pass, so I wanted to play it, and I thought it looked all right. But like I wasn't trying to get like the ultra combos and stuff like that. But in this game, I'm not necessarily dedicating all my time to that, but I have gotten combo strings down that I'm using on a consistent basis, and it's fun to see how these abilities can interact. Yeah, like I already said, the game is not that difficult. Some of the big boss fights, it feels like they want to be Dark Souls in terms of like how they're structured and like an emphasis on dodging and parrying and stuff like that. It just doesn't have the crushing difficulty of Dark Souls, which I'm fine with that. I like having a boss fight where also, when you kill like big bosses, like it'll like go slow motion and it'll say like, I don't know, like troll slain or like icon of flame slain. And it like comes across your screen, like in Dark Souls. It is so sick. And some of the enemies in this game, like you'll just fight like a random dude, like a soldier, like a big soldier guy, and he'll be called like the Knight of the Eternal Flame or whatever, like the coolest name ever, just for no reason. Which is also very like Dark Souls, of like just some random person having the sickest name you've ever heard. But yeah, I guess I could probably jack up the difficulty, but I'm happy with where I'm at. I'm enjoying the game, and I don't need it to be, crushingly difficult. I'm pretty happy with where it's at. But anyway, we've also got the story to cover. Like I said, me caring about the characters in this game and actually understanding the story and knowing what's going on at any given moment has been great. I know that sounds so stupid when I say it, but like you'd be surprised, especially in these big, epic, sprawling, like fantasy RPGs or any RPG really, how easy it can be for me to lose the thread of what's actually going on, especially because I jump around games so much and I have the attention span of a gnat. But like, first off, one of the coolest things in this game, I think it's called active time lore or something like that. At most points in the game, you can just hold your big black button on PlayStation and it will pull up a menu with any relevant lore with wherever you're at. And it's contextual too. So like if you're in the hideaway and you hit it, like information about Sid will pop up. Or if you've just hit a big story beat and you hit it, like context for what you just did will come up. I think it's really cool. And because they're going for that Game of Thrones big plot with all these interconnecting characters in this big world, I think having that at your fingertips at all times is really nice. And it really, like, if you forget, if you're like, who's this? Who's Benedicta? And you like, that's one of the characters. You can be like, oh, well, this is who she is, and this is who she's connected to, and this is what she does. She's not just like, if this was Final Fantasy VII, I'd be like, oh, I don't know who this is, but this is a cool boss fight. She turned into a big bird. Spoilers. But like now I'm like, oh, I know her. She's banging the other icon guy, and she's got this big backstory, and she's really going through it. So I think the active time lore is pretty sick. And I wish more games had it, honestly. I think the way they implemented it is pretty cool. It also like incentivizes me to actually read the lore. Like a lot of this is buried in text. There's even like a dude at the hideaway. His name's like Crimbus or Crumbo or Jimbo. I don't remember his name. He has like an old man name. But you can go talk to him, and as you like log the game, like as you tell him your story, you don't actually tell him, but like you just go click on him, his level will go up, and then you unlock more lore. And there's also like lore inside the lore. I think it's called like Hidden Truth or whatever. So, I mean, that stuff is kind of fun to read. Reading is for nerds, don't get me wrong, but it's relatively short passages that you can kind of bang out, a couple paragraphs. I made a joke about Destiny here. Lore inside the lore. Remember Grimoire cards? Destiny could never. What else? Oh yeah, I have two big issues with this game. All right, well, enough positivity. All right, we got to go back to being a hater. The performance is like not good on play. I would definitively say not good on PlayStation. I always pick performance mode if given the choice between performance and quality, just because I've always found that is my preferred method. I would rather have a higher frame rate than better resolution. However, Final Fantasy XVI does not have a consistent frame rate when you have it in performance mode. It cannot hold 60 frames to save its life. There are constant frame drops, not even in like combat, like just running around, like you'll have frame drops, and it really bothers me. That kind of stuff really does bother me. So just recently, actually yesterday when I was recording, I was looking at my recording when I said that. Yesterday when I was playing, I looked it up because I was like, is this a me thing? Like, do I need to have it installed somewhere else or whatever? And people suggested putting it into graphics mode, and I did. And even though the frame rate is lower, it's more consistent, which so far has made for a more enjoyable experience for me. So I found that to be kind of disappointing. You know, you hope when these games come out that they run well. And I'm sure if I play this thing on like a beefy PC, it would be just fine. But something about it on the PS5 is just not working in performance mode. So if you do pick it up, I would recommend, you can try performance mode, but if you're playing on PS5, I'd recommend having it in quality mode or graphic mode. And I also now I have to talk about the elephant in the room. I mentioned these filler sections in the game, and I do want to talk about it here, because I think if you are going to play this game, you need to know about this going in, because I didn't. I've been comparing these sections of the game to an MMO, right? And that's not a bad thing. I like MMOs. I played Star Wars The Old Republic Online for years. I'm no stranger to MMOs. However, the quality drop-off is like comical, right? And it's most jarring in the beginning of the game, because you get through this intro section, you get through the tutorial parts, and you get through the big lore dumps, and you get through the initial big production push of the game. And then like why does this look and play like an MMO is what I really mean. Like the character models are totally different. They don't look anywhere near as good as they do in the main story sections of the game. There's like barely facial animations. Like when people talk, they're just like rah, 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 rah. Like their mouths are just going up and down. There's like no nuance in the animation at all. And the quests that you're getting, there's a couple exceptions, right? There's a couple quests that you're like, oh, that made me think, that made me use my brain a little bit. That was interesting. There's a little bit of lore. But for the most part, it's like, all right, there's a lot of them that are like delivering soup. I don't know why that is a thing, but it's like, here, go give soup to this guy over here. Go give soup to that guy over there. And like, they tell you their story, and it's like, but it's not enough to actually care. Then there's also just, fetch quests, go here, kill these things, retrieve that. It's like an MMO, right? It's like the beginning quest in an MMO where you're gathering up all these quests to try to level up your character. You're not thinking about the lore implications of what you're doing. You're just going, you're killing like 6 wolves and coming back and turning it in for XP. So I just want to talk about that because I feel like it could be a big turnoff for people. So, just a fair warning, there are some valleys in between all these story beats, but like, and I'll spin it, right? Because I love this game so much. It is kind of a breather, right? I mentioned it earlier that these highs of this story are just so high and so epic and so like emotional and lofty. And it's like, oh my God, like I'm like the tears of hype are just out of control. You kind of need a breather after that, right? It's like, if you're watching an anime and you need, you just got to a big fight, like Itachi versus Sasuke or something you've been waiting for a long time. And then you're like, all right, well, I kind of need to take a breath. Like that was like, we've been building up to this. We had the moment, and now I need to relax. And that's kind of what these sections provide for you. So, to each their own, right? You might hate it more than I do. You might feel the weight of that filler more than I do. But I'm not on a time crunch to review this game. So it's like, I don't mind the filler content. I could see if you are like, like a games media person or someone who has to do this for a living, and you have to finish this game in like a week or two, this filler content would absolutely suck, especially if you just want to get to the next story beat. But like as someone that isn't on a time crunch, I don't really mind it that much. Back to the God of War 3 comparisons, the big awesome boss fights in this game are awesome. I just said that twice, but QTEs are back, baby. Like, you know, hit square and then you do, like, you punch a giant monster. It's awesome. I think more games should have QTEs. Those never got old. So the big reason I compare it to God of War is because the boss fights have this sense of scale that reminds me a lot of God of War. Like I think about like the Kronos fight in God of War 3 where like he's got you between his fingers and you're just so tiny compared to this giant dude. Or like, what was it, God of War? Which God of War had you fighting Ares? Like that was obviously like an older game, but it's still that sense of scale. And that's kind of what this game has too, where like there's one scene in particular where you like power up and you're like Godzilla and you're fighting and you've still got combos and dodges and stuff. So it uses the language of the game that you already know, like dodging and comboing and stuff. But now you're like Godzilla and you have all these new abilities and the music is just at like an 11 out of 10. And like you're emotionally like, oh my God, this is like the culmination of everything my character's been fighting for. And it's just the coolest thing, right? Like it's, I don't know how it's described, but it's just so cool. It's so epic. It's just, I think this game, the reason this game is a 10 out of 10 for me, and it was that first, when you are, I don't want to spoil too much, but when you are Clive and you finally become Godzilla, right? Essentially, that was the moment where I was like, this game is a 10 out of 10, right? When you have to accept the truth. Okay. For those that know, you know, it's like one of the hypest moments I've ever had in a game. Like that's just straight up. So if, you know, if you like that kind of stuff, if you like big anime fights, then I would recommend this game. But yeah, I mean, just wrapping it up here, this game comes together, and while it has its flaws, right, while it has its filler MMO content, it's kind of in just like a perfect bow, wrapped up in a perfect bow otherwise, right? The music, the performances, the gameplay, the scale, right? The story. I mean, for me, this game pretty much hits on every note. Like, yeah, no game is going to be perfect, but that, with that being said, this game is still a 10 out of 10 for me. And I'm glad that I finally picked it up, right? I went in with pretty much no expectations because I didn't know what to expect, which that was a really stupid sentence that I just said, but, you know, and I was really blown away by it. And it's nice for me, you know, getting Astrobot, right? And now getting this game. And it's like, you know, games that really blow me away. Getting 2 in 1 year sort of, is really cool. And I'm happy to play it. And I highly recommend that you play it if anything that I have said here sounds appealing to you. But that's going to wrap up episode 20 of No Credits Rolled. I went a little longer this time because I really felt bad last time about how short the episode was. I'll be honest, I phoned that last episode in, so I really put effort into this one. I don't know. Let me know if you can tell. But I appreciate you listening, regardless. Make sure you can email your questions or your comments over to nocreditsrolled@gmail.com. Of course, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. We'll be there for you. And of course, if you're feeling generous, we do have a Patreon. But hey, that's all I got. I'll see you next time on No Credits Rolled.